It's 7:01. I think we'll get started for our Zoom town hall. Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name's Mike Sullivan. I'm a volunteer on Scott's campaign. Tonight we have Scott Greenlee, candidate for Michigan Republican Party chair, and Jessica Barefield is co-chair running mate, who he just announced this past Monday. So I am going to thanks for joining us this evening, everyone. And I'm going to turn things over to Scott, who's just going to do a couple-minute introduction of himself.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. And I really appreciate everybody jumping on this Zoom. I know that many of us have met and talked in person, but I think more communication is better in any type of decision-making process that an individual has to make. And so certainly we're going to do a lot of communicating on a lot of different venues, a lot of different ways to make sure that the delegates are more engaged, more available. The Jessica and I are more available to the delegates than has been traditionally done. And we're going to make sure delegates are first through this entire process and through the entire next 2 years of the Michigan Republican Party, because we both recognize that's where the strength is. For those that I haven't had a chance to talk to or haven't had an opportunity to present myself to, I live in Lansing. I'm about 10 minutes from the Capitol in terms of where I live on the north end of town, and been here for over a decade, but I've spent the majority of my life in the Grand Rapids area where I grew up. I went to East Kentwood High School. That's where I first got involved in politics. I was lucky enough that my classmates picked me to play Ronald Reagan, of all things, in the school mock election when I was a junior. And like Reagan, we had a nice landslide victory at East Kentwood High School, and then later that night, the national results mimicked that. And, I then went to Grand Rapids Junior College and was there for a couple years. But one thing I noted when I got there was no college Republican club, and I thought, boy, that's a little crazy. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get one started. So as the founder and the first president of the Grand Rapids Junior College Republicans, and that's where I really started interacting with my local party at the time, became a precinct delegate, signed up to do a bunch of door-to-door, make phone calls, volunteered for events, started donating to the party. I can remember my first donation at $25 was a little tough to get together back then because I was a college student, didn't have a lot of money, but I learned right away, or was coached right away, that investing even $5 or $10 was important. So I was glad to do 25 for my first donation, and I've tried to donate and support causes since then. I then went on to the district committee, went on to the local county leadership team as co-chair and as finance chair, and wound up on the state committee, eventually becoming the coalition's vice chair of the state Republican Party. And I had the chance to do that in 2009 and 10, the 2010 election cycle. And, you know, part of the reason I'm excited about this next 2 year period of time is it is almost the same. We were coming off 8 years of a governor with terrible policies. The state's economy was in bad shape. People were moving out of Michigan. Public safety was at a crisis level. And there were just a lot of things going on that our citizens were being taxed with, figuratively and literally. So we got together as a state party team, and we said, we've got to change things. We've got to highlight the inaction of the Democratic Party, the ineptness, the fact that their policies are dangerous to our citizens. And after 8 years, seeing is believing. We think a lot of them will understand the messaging that we present. And we were fortunate that we did, because that year we had an open governor, AG, Secretary of State seats, and we won all three. We had to win back a body of the state legislature, and we did that. We held the other body, the Senate at the time. We were able to hold that. We added to our congressional delegation. We elected 2 Supreme Court candidates that we nominated at our convention, and we were 8 for 8 in education seat wins. And I was really pleased to play a small role in that as one of the vice chairs who was active in the party, and also really to learn and to watch what happened. And I tried to take those lessons forward as I've worked with candidates, with county and district organizations, and with the state party as a volunteer over the last several years. And I've seen a lot of the same type of activity in the same environment lead to success. And a lot of that, President Trump did a great job by building the party through inclusion, not exclusion. When we try and run people out of the party, when we get mad at folks because they don't agree with us on one or two things and they're not exactly perfectly our brand of conservatism, is when we run into trouble. And I've seen it time and time again. And we're going to grow the party through including everybody. President Trump wound up bringing aboard even people who ran against him, who at one point didn't want him to be president, Tulsi Gabbard. And of course, the same situation with Robert Kennedy, who's hopefully being confirmed here, maybe during this webinar or maybe shortly. So if Trump can do that, we can open our party doors to a lot of independents in Michigan, which Michigan has. So that's just some of the background that about me and some of the ideas I've got. One of the ideas I've got, which has been very well received, was to select a co-chair who's been involved at a different level of the party, really, so that we can work together and share strengths and play off each other's experiences. And she will look at things differently than I will, which is healthy. And at the end of the day, she'll probably wind up keeping me in line. But I want to turn things over to her so she can introduce herself and talk a little bit about her background. Jessica, take it away.
Yeah, hi. Thanks everyone for being on with us tonight. Thank you, Scott. I'm really excited for this opportunity. Yes, Scott and I come from, different backgrounds and we have a different history in politics, but we do have a lot in common as well. And I think that our differences and our similarities make us a well-balanced, strong team. For anyone that doesn't know who I am, I'm from Livingston County. I am married to my college sweetheart. We both graduated from MSU. We have two children. They're both teenagers. I'm in the county I grew up in, and we love living here. We love Livingston County. Politics. My husband, did politics younger. I did not. It just wasn't really on my radar. It's not how we were brought up. It wasn't really talked about in our house. And in 2016, my then 8-year-old kept coming home and Trump this and Trump that. And we'd pass road signs and he'd yell, Trump. And I'm like, what is going on? Because we don't talk about him or we don't talk about any of this stuff in our house. So I remember asking him, hey, buddy, like people talking about him at school? And he said, oh, yeah, everyone hates him. And I'm like, but you like him. And he's like, yeah, I like him. And he started telling us all kinds of different stuff. About Trump that he liked. So he actually, I know this sounds completely ridiculous, but led my husband and I to researching Trump beyond him being, on The Apprentice. And we fell in love. We've been huge, avid Trump supporters since, and the whole family went down the rabbit hole of Trump. So that was kind of my kickoff. And then 2020 hit and just nothing sat right with me. I think we as conservatives we're free thinkers and we think outside the box and we don't take things at face value. And so when COVID hit, that's immediately where my brain went. And we started Unmask Livingston County. We started going to our commissioners' meetings. We created groups where we would go from school board meeting to school board meeting and meeting with our sheriff and anyone that would listen, to lift the state of emergency, do not mask our children, do not quarantine our children, which led me to meet Ryan Kelly. I started working for him. I worked for him from 2021 all the way till the election. And then somewhere in there, I decided that to be a precinct delegate, ran for that for the very first time in 2022 and won that, just was reelected as a precinct delegate. So I know what it's all about to be a precinct delegate. I know one of the main concerns that we're kind of hearing from delegates around the state and what I hear from my friends locally is that, when you become a new delegate and you haven't been wrapped in before, if there's a lot of confusion, you don't really understand what you can do, what you can't do. You don't really understand what your role is. And so I know that, it's really important for Scott and I, especially since this is something that I'm coming fresh off of, making sure that the delegates are first and they're educated and they have what they need and they're, very much a part of the party and part of the team. And we're here to work for you guys. And then, that's definitely a goal of ours. And in all of that, I also was the executive director of Livingston County Republican Party for a period of time. The last year I served as the vice chair for Livingston County Republican Party. I've been the state committee member for the 7th district the last 2 years. And then I was on the budget committee for the Michigan Republican Party. So very hard and fast for me. When I decide I'm doing something, I'm all in, and I'm doing it to the best of my ability. I don't halfway anything. So I think the last 4 years of my life are a testament to that.
That's great. Mike, do we want to jump into a couple questions at this point? I think you're probably getting some already.
Yeah, we can certainly jump into questions. Scott, one of our first questions is actually one that's been asked a few times already. Can you talk about your plan and strategy for election integrity and making sure that the election in 2026 is secure?
Absolutely. And one of the reasons that Jessica is on the team is, for those who didn't know, she was on the Trump 47 team as an election integrity specialist and oversaw that. And I'm going to let her talk a little bit about that in a minute. But, you know, historically, we've wound up relying on other organizations to manage our election integrity efforts. And I think it's overdue time that the Michigan Republican Party actually had their own election integrity director so that we could quarterback the agenda. We can work directly with the counties in terms of cleaning lists up and work with recruiting our attorneys and train regular volunteers that aren't attorneys but can play a vital role in providing oversight at all those polling places around the state where we need to do a good job. You know, at the end of the day, every citizen needs to have confidence that their vote counted, that it only counted once, and that nobody who shouldn't be voting was weighing in and damaging the integrity of our free election system. And in Michigan in particular and nationally, that's been an issue recently. It's a huge priority of mine. We've got to get that right. If we don't get that right, all the work, all the donations, all the marketing of our candidates would go for naught. So, Jessica, can you tell the crew a little bit about what you did with the Trump 47 team and your thoughts about this as well?
Yeah, I can't even believe that I left that off of my roster, because that is like
All
the
right.
honor of a lifetime to be part of President Trump's team, winning team. One of the individuals, I don't know how much my contributions helped, but I feel like, all of us together is what got him over the finish line in Michigan. But yes, I was one of the regional directors of election integrity for Trump Force 47. I did most of the back end data, but our team was in charge of recruiting and training poll challengers and watchers during the election. And so with thousands, I'm trying to think, I'm the one that had all the data. 35,000, 50,000, maybe. I'd have to go back and relook. But those are the number of delegates and individuals around the state that we were able to train. And most of them, or quite a few of them, we ended up shifting. So what that meant was then we had to look at every single voting polling location in the state of Michigan and take those individuals that we had trained and then contact them via phone, text, email, and basically schedule them for a shift to make sure that the polls were being monitored by somebody from our side in every county, at every location, as many as we could find people to man. And then from there, on election day, we were in what we called the war room at Suburban Showplace. And there was like half the room was your regional directors. The other half of the room were lots of very important attorneys. And we fielded all of the phone calls from our poll workers and poll challengers. Anything that looked funny, seemed off, anything that they felt like needed to be addressed. A lot of it, luckily, here in Michigan, I feel like a lot of it was, everything seemed, not everything, but a lot of it seemed on the up and up. But the things that seemed more emergent, that seemed like a very potential serious issue, we would elevate immediately to one of the attorneys that would locate people on the ground to handle the situation and make sure that it was rectified or everything was on the up and up. So that's what we did.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. And obviously, we feel that this election, while we know shenanigans were attempted, we feel we had our arms around it, a lot better than we have in the past. By the way, for those who might have missed it, And some people have been talking about this. ID is not required in Michigan to vote. I think there's a common belief out there that it is, because people have different information on that. But my friend Megan Reckling was pointing that out on her X account today, and potentially her other social media. I saw her talking about it there. And fortunately, we've got a member of the legislature who's addressing that right now. State Rep Brian Posthumous from the Grand Rapids area has brought forward a constitutional amendment. It was introduced today. It would require voter ID, and also require that only U.S. citizens, therefore, would be able to vote. And having that requirement put into Michigan and put into practice, and having some teeth to it if it's not adhered to, is something that the State House is very adamant about. And I will certainly, as chair, work with Representative Posthumous, with Speaker Hall, and the appropriate members of the Senate to continue to encourage this. We've got a Democrat governor who's not real big on election integrity, so we'll see where this will go. But at least having one body of the legislature, as we currently do, we can hopefully negotiate a lot of things. And let's face it, this is an issue where across party lines, 80% nearly of Michigan citizens believe that this is something that should be done. So we're optimistic, and we're grateful that the House, led by Brian Posthumous, are taking this on. Mike, we got another question?
Yes, Scott. One of the common ones that are being shot in right now are on fundraising. Can you talk a little bit about how much and what would the budget look like for state party next cycle, and what's your plan to fundraise to meet that goal?
Great question. Really important, obviously. So first of all, the chair is the fundraiser in chief of the party. There's no two ways about it. They have kind of got to go out and raise somewhere between $30 and $40 million in a non-presidential year, especially with a Senate race being up. The fact we've got to win the Senate back in Michigan, and a number of other priorities. Some of that money will be brought to us by other organizations. For example, I would think that the Republican Governors Association nationally will be very interested in helping us and partnering with us. Same with the National Senate Committee and other organizations like that are interested in good government and would like to support our particular candidates. So a good chunk of that money will come into the state if we have a good working relationship, if there's a high level of trust between those organizations that would be entrusting the state party with those funds. Hasn't always been the case, but I think my record is very good, and I will be extremely compliant and transparent with all of our donor partners, and of course with the state committee, with the budget committee, and even delegates will have a better opportunity to see what's going on from a financial standpoint with the party than they've ever had before. That I assure you. Now, in terms of the other piece of that puzzle that isn't shared to us with other organizations, that's just a lot of phone calls. It's a lot of meetings. It's developing a good strategic plan to present to the donor community so that they can take confidence that their money will be spent appropriately and results will be gained. We will do this in pieces. We'll do it by metrics, where we get the meetings, and I've got the ties in every part of this party to reach out and meet with people, from the newest delegates to the most senior donors. I'll use every one of those contacts and present a plan and include metrics, so that if somebody's considering giving $100,000 to the party, I'll probably ask them to do a portion of that initially, and then I'll come back to them and let them know how we're doing, kind of a progress report, if you will. This is how I've raised millions of dollars in the past for different causes. I've done that in 3 walks of life: in the business world, in the nonprofit world, and in the political world. And I've done it compliantly. I've done it with confidence. We've gotten good results. And one thing I also recognized, I mentioned being transparent early on. It's especially appropriate that you have a high level of fiduciary responsibility when you're dealing with donor dollars. I've done this in multiple walks of life. The corporate world is important, of course, but it's a little different than when your organization's lifeblood are the generous contributions, whether it's $5 or $500,000 of people investing in the party or investing in the nonprofit cause. And whether it's sitting on international foundations that work for children's charities, like I do with the Kiwanis organization currently, whether it's heading up global JCI causes and working to make things better for young people around the world there, or whether it's raising, over $6 million for a ballot initiative a few years ago, helping raise millions for gubernatorial, presidential, and other statewide races. I've done it. I've been successful. I've handled it appropriately, and I'm ready to do that again for the Michigan Republican Party.
All right, Scott. So moving on to our next topic, folks want to talk about, want to hear your perspective on what's the political landscape like this next cycle, and what type of political plan are you going to put together to ensure that the state party has a successful cycle?
That's a great question, and I'm going to ask Jessica to talk a little bit about the grassroots piece of this in a minute and get her thoughts. But we have got to follow President Trump's example and work with areas of the state that are full of non-traditional voters. We've got to grow the party by inclusion instead of exclusion. We've got to recognize that every potential vote out there counts to right the state of Michigan. And I think when we reach out to people, we're going to have an opportunity to present to them a very stark contrast. We're going to be able to present to them what the last 8 years of Michigan looked like and the challenges, and whether it was the lockdowns, whether it was the businesses closing, whether it was frankly a lot of legislation and policy ideas that the Democrats tried to cram through, and fortunately, thanks to Leader Hall and Leader Nesbitt and others at the time, weren't able to get through in their own ineptness, frankly. So we're also going to have Donald Trump's results working for us. That's going to be front and center. People are going to see the president's policies in action. They are going to understand that there's kind of a culture war or talking point war going on, and that's fine and dandy. But the results are going to be on our side, as they were when Trump was president previously, and as I'm 100% sure they will be again. And that provides voters with a stark contrast, taking a look at the failed policies of Democrats, not just nationally, but here in Michigan, a woke culture, priorities that are way out of whack, being balanced with the fact that here in Michigan, we're going to have a couple years under our belt of a second President Trump term. And we're also armed with the knowledge that, when we've had Republican governors in the last 30 years, the population of the state's increased. And when we've had Democrat governors, literally every time the population's decreased, people have wanted to get out of Michigan because of the economy, public safety, things like that. So I think we can make that case well. But Jessica, I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all noticed that a lot of what we've experienced in the last 4 years is absolutely like a social war or a culture war. It's been on all of our doorsteps at one point or another. It's that social war, culture war that really got me fired up in the first place. Um, it was something that I fought. I ran for, that was another thing I left off. I ran for school board in the Pinckney School District in 2022. And the reason that was because when all of this first started happening, I started going to school board meetings because I wasn't happy with the masking. And what I realized, and I think what a lot of people or a lot of parents didn't realize, was all the other things that were happening, all the things behind closed doors that unless you show up in one of those meetings, you don't realize. And your kids aren't really coming home and saying much, yes, well, did you have a good day? And it's usually like a yes or no, or so-and-so was mean. Um, and I'm sitting in these meetings and I'm like, they're doing what? And what is this? And during one of the particular meetings, they started talking about this plan that they had to make the entire school district an SEL, so social emotional learning, which is basically like a cousin of DEI, and that they were looking to purchase a curriculum and that's what every class, whether it was math or art or science, and every grade would be based in an SEL driven program. I went down the rabbit hole on that and started fighting my school board on it. I thought I had 5 years. My child came home from school, my seventh grader at the time. And he's like, "You're right. It happened. I thought that you were going to be wrong, but they pulled me out of my math today and they made me learn SEL and they told me I was born bad." And I'm like, "Excuse me, what?" And so that led to a 3-hour meeting with my superintendent, which led me to insisting on all of that curriculum. And they would send it to me every week, and I would decide if I was opting him in or out. We opted out of most of them. It's what led me to run for school board and try to advocate against that. So, to see President Trump. And then ultimately when I lost the school board run, and that's why I was doing it, I'm like, if I can be a voice on there and stop this, then, or at least slow it or bring awareness to it, then I would be comfortable with my children staying here. When I lost and every single seat was a Democrat seat and they were full steam ahead, I pulled my kids. So we currently homeschool. We have seventh grade and 10th grade. But there's no saying, there's no telling. We've discussed if, the climate were to change, and these changes President Trump is making, and it trickles down into our states and things start to improve and we get back to the fundamentals, and not this crazy, psychological warfare, we would consider going back to public school. But for now, we homeschool. And I want to be advocate for that. I want to continue to advocate and, hopefully piggyback off of the things that President Trump is doing to make things better for the citizens and the delegates and everyone that lives in the great state of Michigan.
That's great.
All right. So for our next question, Scott, folks want to know, one of the common attacks from your other opponents in the chairman race right now is that you're a political consultant, and that's a negative. Can you talk a little bit about your experience as a consultant and why you think that's a good thing in this case?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been fortunate not to be attacked too much, which is good, as these things can often get messy and things can get half truths and innuendos and all sorts of things. So the first thing I'd ask everybody on is, if you hear something about me that seems a little unsavory, just reach directly out to me. Everybody's got my cell phone, everybody's got my email, and if not, they're right there on the website. And of course, I don't have any staff that checks those. Those go to me. So it does take me a couple of days sometimes to get back to messages, but I do always follow up with every call. Now, as a consultant, I think that's absolutely the ideal type of person to run the party. First of all, I won't have any private clients in the political world while I'm serving as state party chair. There's just no two ways about it. You could not, from a perception standpoint, even run a state party organization and also have a favored candidate for governor, for U.S. Senate, for state house, anything along those lines. So I don't want the perception that anything's going on that's improper. I do have some current clients. A couple of them will be up for re-election, but basically I seek and get new clients typically during an election year that provides 80-90% of my business. I will not be seeking any clients to do any strategic consulting with in the political world during the next 2 years. 100% of my consulting experience, my strategic political experience, will go to the Michigan Republican Party, so that we can help every Republican candidate that wins their primary or the convention race. And I think that that's just perfect. But secondly, in addition, there's only 168 hours in a week. And any delegate here, any active Republican, any office holder ought to want and demand a full-time focused state party chair. So if I was trying to do something on the side, I just wouldn't be successful. And those of you who know me know that everything I do, I try and do absolutely as best as I possibly can. I've turned down, in fact, historically, clients who've wanted me to work with them because I've had too many other things going on. And I've always said I'd rather win 6 or 8 races in a cycle than try and do 15 races and lose half of them. It just doesn't make any kind of sense at all. So I don't think there's enough time to do anything other than do this job. This is a 40 to 50 hour a week job at the very minimum. And as we ramp up getting near election time, it's 70 hours, it's 80 hours, it's probably a little more. As a consultant, I understand the marketplace. I deal with other consultants, I observe other consultants, and the party will not have to hire as many of those consultants as they traditionally have, because I will be working as the lead consultant for the party. That will save us some hard-earned dollars, some donor dollars. But also, because I understand the marketplace, the technology, the pricing, people aren't going to be able to take advantage of the state party. I understand this stuff as well as anybody who's going to come in and bid or pitch their services to the party, and I'll make sure we're getting every penny possible out of every single dollar that's given to us. I mentioned it a little earlier. There is a higher level of fiduciary responsibility required when you operate with donor dollars, and I assure you, I will take that responsibility very seriously. So, as a state party chair, again, to reiterate, since there seems to be a lot of confusion on this, and I don't know if that's being driven by people who support my opponents or not, but to be crystal clear, I will not have and be doing strategy for any individual candidate. There are a lot of other consultants out here who will easily be able to pick up and work with the folks I've worked with in the past. I will absolutely be focused on being state party chair. That will be my only job. And importantly, I will hold every vendor, every partner, everybody who comes to the table accountable through bid processes where appropriate, and ensure that we're at market rate or below market rate with everything the party does.
All right. Thank you, Scott. The next question that's been asked from a few attendees is, what is your and Jessica's plan to involve the precinct delegates more within the Republican Party? And also a more technical question, would you consider charging delegates to attend state conventions as been posed by prior administrations?
I'm going to let Jessica talk a little bit about this, because her background and one of the reasons she's the perfect running mate is she came from and is a strong part of the grassroots and the delegate program. But I can only assure you that with the fundraising contacts I've got, by the way, not just here in Michigan, but nationally, there's a lot of money out there that's either moved out of Michigan but still cares about Michigan, or people who just want to make sure we hold the House and the Senate federally and will invest in states that are a little more purple than maybe they're in. I've had campaign operations and political contacts and work in, I think, 15 different states in addition to Michigan. And I'm going to be reaching out to every one of those contacts where appropriate and trying to bring money into the state. So I think as a result of that, we won't be in a situation where we've got to charge our delegates and alternates and guests to attend state convention. We want to do big state conventions. We want to have good, high-profile guests. We want to be transparent in everything we do. And I believe, again, I've got the fundraising background to make that happen. But in terms of getting the grassroots a little more involved, Jessica, what's some of your thoughts on that?
So I know that a lot of us, and I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier when I was kind of introducing myself, but the delegates as a whole feel like there is a lack of communication, there's a lack of education, and they feel kind of really like, a lot of them feel like they're just kind of like drifting in the wind to figure it out themselves. They feel disconnected from things. They don't really know what to do when they show up at state conventions, where to be, how it works. They're disconnected with like what the inner workings are doing and what's happening. And I think we've been coming up with some different ideas, but we'd really like to start doing, monthly Zooms where we're updating the delegates on what is happening within the party. So you're getting a sense of where we're at, what we have going on, the money we're raising. We want to create an interactive calendar where everyone can go to and see all of the different events in the state. What the Lincoln Day dinners are, who's having a forum or a Reagan Day dinner. We want to create possibly trainings. We haven't really solidified completely what that's going to look like, but I had made a suggestion that possibly that we would create resources and trainings and get that information to the chairs of each county. And we want to be able to be a resource for the different chairs in the county, so they're really wrapped in. And if they need help with anything, we're there for them, and that we're funneling the information that's needed and the educational resources that are needed for the delegates and their party, to feel more connected and understand what they can do, what they can't do. I know when I came in, I didn't know what a precinct delegate was. It was just like, run for this thing. You get to show up at this, once or twice a year. You get to vote for some stuff. And I was like, okay. You show up to that stuff. You don't really understand that there's so much more to it. You can be the boots on the ground, knocking doors. You can be making phone calls. You can be very wrapped in, and you can do election integrity work. There's so many different things that you can do as a delegate, and so we want to be able to educate everyone, be communicative with everyone. That as a delegate, we serve you. We want to make sure that you have what you feel like you need to be the most successful in your role. When you're successful, we're successful, and we really kind of want to grow that team, and so nobody kind of feels like they're stuck on the outside looking in.
It's great. Mike, before we jump to whatever the next question is, if I can also throw in there that Jessica mentioned education and really trying to empower the delegates by making sure they understand what's going on. That's part of transparency, but it's just part of good governance and good management as well. I haven't rolled out a whole bunch of endorsements. I've got a bunch, but in this day and age, it's kind of tough to do that, because for everybody who supports you, there's somebody who doesn't like them and what have you. But one person who's been very public about supporting me is JD Glazer. JD ran last time for chair. He's the 5th district chair. He's very enthusiastic and very much behind myself and Jessica. And he's also volunteered to do a lot of delegate education himself. He does it currently. I'm partnering with him on one that he's got on the 15th of February. And I would think utilizing our own resources and people that have particular skills from the grassroots will be something that we do. And I think JD will be a part of that in some way, shape, or form. Don't know what that looks like yet, but I would say that there will be formalized education opportunities in person and on Zoom that will be utilized going forward.
All right. Thank you, Scott. So for our next question, it's been asked a couple of times. What is your perspective on how we as a party are going to recruit and attract additional minority voters, especially in areas like Wayne County and downriver?
What a great question. We saw President Trump go into areas that I wonder if Republicans had ever gone in. President Trump showed us again. It's build the party by inclusion. It's get people involved. It's explain to people what our policies are, what we really stand for, without necessarily walking in there and doing it as pushing a party label. We're more interested in pushing policies, because if we can, again, educate voters and communities on what the Republican Party platform is, what we believe in our hearts, we find that the majority of Americans, and certainly even the majority of Michiganders, are going to be behind that. And I think a lot of that will help at the local level. I want to make county parties and county party leadership really front and center in this campaign and then in the next 2 years. I think that will lead us to a lot of success. We are the perfect bottom-up organization, because if every one of our 83 counties can turn out more votes, can be more successful, can reach into communities where traditionally maybe they haven't been Republicans, if they can find and embrace candidates right after the primary and really work together as a team, we're going to be more successful as a state, because those 83 counties that make up the state are really what's most important. The more local you are in politics, the more it matters. And so we're going to work a lot with that type of recruitment and providing resources, not just during the election and not just a couple months before the election where it's obvious pandering and it's obvious, oh my goodness, we haven't tried anything in this community. Let's get out there and show them we care. Well, that doesn't show them we care. That shows them that we're opportunistic. We are going to truly invest and truly reach out, again, in partnership with our county parties, by providing resources, by providing support in terms of people and ideas, so that we can reach out to those folks on a regular basis, those non-traditional Republicans, and talked about our different ideas, our different vision, what our candidates will do when elected to make their lives, their communities, their neighborhoods better than they've been. Trump did it and was successful, and we need to embrace and move forward on that. Jessica, do you have any thoughts on that? Anything maybe I missed? Or
No, just that that's a passion of mine. As somebody that was a vice chair for one of the local parties, it, I would have loved, not that we didn't get support, we did, but I think that there are some different things that can maybe be done to kind of bridge some of the gap and be, like you had said, more inclusive, where we're having more communication with our local, chairs and vice chairs of the different counties to make sure that they have everything in the toolbox they need to succeed locally. And you're right, it's bottom up, and the more counties that can, retain, and win red seats, the better the state is as a whole.
yeah, we're going to definitely try and also create opportunities for those counties to share best practices and let us know what's working, so that everything can be sizable. If it works in Ontonagon, it may work in Oakland. There's a lot more people, there are different challenges, but most of this stuff will scale. Most of these best practices and are worth everybody hearing to see what fits in their community. We're not going to be top down at all. This is bottom up type stuff. This is the county parties tell us how we can make their lives better, how we can make them more effective, and that it'll be Jessica and my job to go out and provide the resources and make this happen, both in terms of human capital resources, financial resources, all those types of things to build better county parties.
All right, next question, Scott. Can you touch on what you envision as far as a role for staffers, like field representatives and field directors, as we've had in the past in the party in different areas of the state, as well as victory centers? And what's your perspective on voter contact tool, such as Campaign Sidekick, I-360, et cetera, and getting that in place for the party next cycle?
Got a lot of thoughts on this because, again, I've been in a position to work with a lot of these different data type sources. I've also worked victory centers literally for the last 30 years in Michigan. I oversaw all the victory centers one election cycle. So I'm very aware of this stuff. First thing that we need to do is we need to raise the resources to have as many victory offices as possible at the local level. I can remember years where we had 25, 30, 35 victory offices all working together, all pitching in, and really that's a wonderful situation, because we were trying to make sure that nobody would have to go a certain amount of miles or a certain time frame before they could get to one of our headquarters and get signs and get lit and work with the local staff there. So we're going to really try and roll things out and support people at the local level. It's also going to be important for us to utilize data better than we've done in the past. And by that, I don't mean any one particular data vendor or data software group. They're all good. None of them are perfect. So what I want to do as chair with an IT person that understands these things much better than I do is sit down and for the first 2 to 3 months, vet out what options are in the marketplace, take a look at costs, take a look at updating schedules and all these types of things. Then I want to make sure that we're in a financial position to acquire something probably by midsummer. July would seem like a good date, so that the party can purchase it either with partnership of a C4 organization or potentially purchasing it ourselves outright. We can spend a couple months getting very comfortable with it. And then at the Mackinac conference, which, by the way, I've got some thoughts on making that a pretty special time. But at the Mackinac conference, we can present our county chairs with login credentials, with real accurate training modules and support, so that everybody can go back from Mackinac and have all that data at their fingertips, which will be updated throughout the campaign cycle. And hopefully we can utilize it in a uniform manner, so that our House candidates aren't out using one system, and our Senate candidates aren't using another system, and our county parties aren't using another system. And we were even in a situation where bordering counties were using different types of platforms this cycle. I don't think that does anybody any good. We're going to try and get folks working together as much as possible, and state party will try and absorb most of those costs so that our local county parties, regardless of size, can have access to data early and often, and it'll be good, updated, regular data that's out there. Also, rolling out signs to different parts of the state. All these types of things that are the blocking and tackling that really make a difference on the local level. We are going to try and bring from Lansing out to the counties and do it in a very detailed and methodical process. And we're going to try and have enough staff out there as well to make sure that when you're low on something, it gets replenished quickly and efficiently. And our volunteers are never looking for materials or ways to influence voters. That'll also cover some town halls that the party will try and organize and do, particularly in areas where we're trying to get new votes out or critical swing areas, so that citizens have an opportunity to come in, work with the local party, air their grievances, find out what our answers are, and again, move forward with more votes for our red team in November of 26.
All right, thank you, Scott. Some more of the attendees want some more information on your plans to increase transparency within the party, especially with the financial records. And in addition to that, increasing communication among district and county parties.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's real important stuff. So I'm going to ask Jessica to talk about some of her experiences and some of the increased communication things that her and I have talked about over the last few days in a minute. But suffice it to say, we will be as transparent an organization as we've ever been. We will run things through the budget committee properly. We will make sure the treasurer of the party knows what's going on. We will make sure that we are aware of all of our compliance dates. We'll do a big master calendar with the help of election officials for campaign finance right at the beginning of the term, so nothing gets missed. We'll make sure that the budget committee has access to those types of reports, and we'll make sure the state committee and delegates themselves have access to more of the records than they've ever had before. Further, I will always make sure that if people want to come to Lansing and have a more in-depth discussion, those types of meetings are hosted, they are welcomed, because we have to be an organization that our stakeholders, which is everybody on this call, all the delegates, all the elected officials, have total confidence in that we're getting every penny properly and compliantly out of every dollar we take in. That will include bid processes for services and vendors. That will include making as much of this stuff available, you know, maybe not online, because anything that goes online, even if it's password protected, Democrats may be able to get their hands on it and use it strategically against it. But in terms of at the budget committee meetings, at the state committee meetings, and again, if people want to come in and talk about this stuff, we're going to be real upfront and real transparent. And that'll extend not just to the finances, which is a major talking point now, but to the prioritization of races and where our focus is going to be and what types of issues we're going to focus on. Again, taking a ton of that information from the local level where people really know what's going on. We'll be in Lansing, we'll be all over the state. We won't be the area experts anywhere. We will simply try and talk to all those area local experts and make sure that the best plans are put in play at that point. Jessica, you've got some thoughts on this. I know we've talked about it a lot over the last few days in particular. What do you think about this, and what do you think some things are that we can do?
Well, I think anyone that's been ear to the ground and really wrapped in the last year and a half has probably seen that obviously transparency is a hugely important topic for me. As somebody that did serve on the budget committee under Christina Caramo, as well as Pete Hoekstra, I have, firsthand knowledge and firsthand front row seat for what it looks like to be part of an organization and feel like information isn't being freely shared with, the individuals within that organization. So, and I know that that's really important to a lot of people, not just myself. Without getting into like crazy amounts of details, I know the information that that the budget committee is supposed to be seeing. I know the information that's supposed to be shared. I know the information that as a budget committee member that we want to see, what we would feel comfortable being involved in, that would make us feel more comfortable even sitting in that position, because it's a heavy position to sit in when your name is on this committee that is in charge of other people's money and millions of dollars of it. That's a heavy weight to bear. And as people know, the state committee members, it is a volunteer position. It's not a paid job. You're doing it of your own kindness and your own goodwill. And to take on that responsibility, there has to be a level of respect and communication with the higher ups in the committee, and those serving as the lower members. And so I definitely plan to work closely with whoever our finance chair is, and Scott, to make sure that we are communicating properly, we are being transparent. People are not going to let things slip by. They're going to hold our feet to the flames. And I don't want my feet held to the flames. I just want to give them what I know that they're going to need. And so that is definitely high on my list of things that I will acutely be keeping an eye on, and making sure that we are doing what is right and what is transparent by the members of our party.
That's great. Mike, let me expand on one other thing too, because I've been getting a lot of questions. In fact, I talked to a delegate from the 2nd Congressional District today about staffing. And this delegate wanted to make sure that they had a good idea of where my head was in terms of these staff appointments, the general counsel, the executive director, the political director, all these types of things. I want to be very clear that the only person that's got any kind of position guaranteed or promised or what have you is Jessica. Jessica will be the co-chair of the party. Beyond that, I think it is inappropriate for any chair candidate to make promises to people that they're going to hire them, to make potentially quid pro quo type arrangements that, hey, if you support me here, I'll take care of you there. There's been none of that. If you hear there has, it's 100% not accurate, and I'd ask that you alert me, you let me know, so I can absolutely put an end to it. Instead, the proper way to do this is immediately after the election, coming up with, and I've already started working on this, of course, the actual job descriptions, and then putting those out there so that a lot of people can review them and apply, and every single person can be considered. And Jessica will be a part of that. Our elected vice chairs and some state committee members will be a part of that in some positions, so that it's not just an individual who's the chair unilaterally making the decision, but it's a team-oriented decision, and we do it in as transparent and public a process as possible with respect to the hiring laws of the state of Michigan and the United States. So we're going to look at everybody. We don't know who might be interested in working with the team. To date, nobody's approached me to want to be executive director or political director, but I'm sure right after the convention, we'll get a lot of interest, and we'll handle it quickly, efficiently, transparently, and as a team versus a unilateral decision by myself. And we're going to make sure that we do that with every position. Nothing is promised. Nothing's out there. Everything will be open. It'll be a complete blank sheet of paper for Jessica and I to decide how to fill it in, and what positions make sense and what those positions should do.
All right. Thanks, Scott. We have time for probably 2 more questions before we close tonight. The next question is youth involvement in the party. Can you talk about your opinions with that?
I love that. Come on. That's a softball. Thank you. Yeah, I got started, as I mentioned earlier on tonight, as a college Republican. That's when I really got connected with my local party. It's when I learned what a precinct delegate was. It's when I learned who my state senator and state rep were. I had these, thoughts of the platform and Reagan and, some national figures, but I really didn't understand the county commission and all that stuff. And it was great that I learned at an age of 17 or 18 years old so that I could really be a Republican for life instead of getting involved in 30, 40, 50-year-old person and missing out a lot. Now, don't take that wrong. If you got a 50-year-old neighbor, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100-year-old neighbor that wants to get involved in the party, get them involved. But I want to put a big emphasis on the youth involvement. That's where my roots are. It's where my heart is. In fact, earlier today, I attended via Zoom the Saginaw Valley State College Republican Club meeting, talked to them. I'm grateful for their support and for the support of so many youth leaders around the state, because they understand this is where I came from, and that I'll be extremely supportive, not just in helping them get active, but in funding and providing resources so they can do a great job on campuses of turning some minds and getting some people out from a voting standpoint. We've got to partner with organizations like Turning Point and like other organizations that are active on our campuses. I can't wait to work with that group. They have been so excited and made such a difference. But I think with the opportunity to really collaborate with the party and provide resources that will augment what they're doing, we can do an even better job. Every campus in the state of Michigan ought to have a college Republican club. Every large community ought to have a young professional Republican group getting together and meeting and talking about ways to get other folks involved and get the vote out. So it's going to be a high priority for me. I would venture to say, and I don't know historically all the budgets, but I would venture to say that I'll be putting more resources into our youth than has ever been done before. It'd surprise me if anyone had ever done more than what I plan to do with our youth.
All right, and then our last question of the night, Scott, and probably the biggest one that folks have been asking is the problem of building unity in our party right now. Can you talk about your perspective on that?
I'll talk a little bit, and I'll let Jessica talk a little bit, because again, she's somebody who's been very much tuned in with the grassroots movements, not just with the party, but with other auxiliary organizations she's been part of and what have you. But essentially, to me, it gets down to communication. It gets down to making sure that every part of the entire party, and we know we've got a lot of different tribes, we've got a lot of different groups that are stakeholders in this great organization. They all need to be heard. They all need to be treated with respect. They all need to have a voice, a seat at the table. Their vision needs to be explained to the other parts so that we can vet every idea and make sure we're putting into play the best ideas. Not everybody's idea will work. Not all my ideas will work. Not all Jessica's ideas will work, but every single one of them needs to have some equal weight. And, that's why things like my cell phone won't change and my email won't change, and people will be able to reach out and say, hey, we don't think we're getting our fair shake in this topic, or we don't think, we're being heard on this point, so that the chair and the co-chair can actually hear those points of view and follow up and try and make sure that everybody is at the same table, and we all agree that, hey, we want a Republican governor candidate. We may have different ideas of who that should be in the primary. The party will have no input or no idea on who it should be in the primary, but individuals will. And those folks can all agree that whoever wins, it's going to be better than the Democratic alternative. Same thing with our Senate candidate and all our offices top to bottom. So we need to really foster an environment of respect and of good communication. Jessica, you've done a lot of this stuff at the local level. You've seen some tumultuous times and also worked to kind of bring some unity back. So why don't you talk about some of your experiences there?
Yeah, I know that is the unity is a huge topic, and it's been on the horizon for about a year now. We definitely, whether, different county levels, state level, we've seen kind of the juxtaposition and, the turning on each other, for different groups, for different reasons. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're all conservatives. We're all looking to get Republicans elected. We all share the same, fundamental values as human beings, conservative human beings. And I really think that it's at this point we've gotten to like a train of thought. Like it's kind of like a embedded in our brain train of thought that we've kind of grown into over the last couple of years. And I believe it's probably going to take conscious effort on all of our part to, break that way of thinking, or that way of, you start to get upset with somebody because they're disagreeing with you. And you kind of want to go back to that initial, thought or feeling on the topic. And we really have to stop and get away from that. Um, as somebody that did start grassroots, I had my own set of opinions at one point in time. I tell people all the time um, I have politically matured or educated myself. And it really takes all of us. It takes all of us to be successful, every single group. So I know for me personally, like when I'm talking to people, and if, we can be kind of like that beacon of light for, in moments of, people's rash decisions or words or negativity. If somebody comes to you and you're like, oh, well, they're establishment. Well, great. That's awesome. We need the establishment, right? That just means that they've been around a long time. They have knowledge we don't have. Let's see where we can put them. Like, we want the establishment. Oh, that person's grassroots, they're way too far right. No, I love that. I love that. Like, we need fresh, new ideas and new thoughts, and that's how we grow and we share. So we really have to all, it's not like a one person or a small team or just Scott or I. It's going to be a conscious effort that is made by all of us. And even if it's just a few of us starting it, and it trickles and trickles and trickles and more people join in. I want that unity. I know we all want that unity, but there isn't any one person that can fix it. We're all going to have to work on it actively together.
Absolutely. We got to find common ground, stuff we can agree on. And, Reagan set a great example of it when I was first getting involved, and Donald Trump setting a great example of it now. So if they can do it, we can sure follow their lead.
Well, let's just even look like, in recent months, would I think anyone on this call, or anyone, regardless of where you identify yourself in the party, would you have preferred Aliska Slotkin over Mike Rogers? I would take a Republican any day that agrees with me, 70 or 80% of the time, than a Democrat that is going to agree with me 0% of the time. And we're free thinkers as Republicans, right? Like, that is part of what makes us a conservative. We are free thinkers. And I'm not quite sure we've gotten to this place where we demonize each other for being free thinkers and, making our own individual choices. We need to get back to embracing that, because that's kind of who we are as a core, and respecting each other. And I think that if we can start making more conscious efforts to, like, kind of reprogram our brains or our thoughts, or, kind of in a very positive light, shut down the negative talk. Because there are very few actual rhinos out there, let's be honest. So let's just work together and build a great team.
I like it. I like it. Well, let me wrap up. It's a couple minutes after 8. We wanted to keep you for an hour. We wanted to do this in the format that we did it, so that people weren't tripping over each other and what have you. We had this in webinar style. We'll probably do that again, because it's fairly efficient and allows us to stay on point. But we need your ideas. We need your thoughts. We need your suggestions. So anything that you had, please send us an email. Jessica or I will get back to you as quickly as we can, within a day or two. Worst case scenario, all that contact information is on the website, which is Greenlee for MIGOP chair.com. That's GREENLEE, the number 4, MIGOP chair.com. I sure hope that you attend your county conventions tomorrow night and you become a delegate or an alternate. If you need to know any information about the convention, the locations and such have been up on our website for a while. So go to that website again for more information on our background, the platform, what we're looking to do. That's there. And shameless, selfish plug as a candidate. Please also on that site, there's a link you can click on to endorse our team. I'd ask that you do that. Just click on, fill your name in. We get a bunch of those every day, which is nice, but we want to make sure that everybody that supports us is on board, and that will help us as we get going a little further in the campaign. So thank you all so very much for taking your time, Jessica, and I really appreciate it. Can't wait to see a bunch of you tomorrow night, over the next 25 days. And then importantly, over the next many months, as we head up to what will be a victorious 2026 with a nice Republican clean sweep. Thank you all. God bless. Have a nice day.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.